you mentioned right at the start about the number of companies that are engaging with No Falls over 5,000. But I think that we talked about then the probably the self-employed are hard to get to, and we've used that word communication a few times. So how do you think we get the better lines of communication with them to get our messages to land to those individuals? Is it TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat? Because you've got a younger end, but also you've got an older end of people that are probably they've done that job. Well, why do I need protection? I've done this job. But then if I'm taking on some new people into the business, do I then pass on those bad habits to them? Because you just go, you don't need that. Because look, I'm living proof. Ours. How do you think we get to those individuals?
I think it's really interesting, and quite frankly, if a TikTok, if somebody getting on TikTok and demonstrating how to use a harness properly and how to clip on is the difference between somebody paying attention to it and not, flood TikTok with it, flood Insta, flood Snapchat, etc. Like any method of communication. And as health and safety professionals, we are generally really good
Mhm.
at changing the way we communicate depending on the audience.
Yeah.
The way I talk to my board is very different from the way I talk to my finance team, is very, very different to the way I would talk to a lifeguard or an usher. Um, and and that we need to become really adept.
Yeah.
And I think one of the really important things is actually listening to people, going to forums that they already are in, going to, I don't know, local chambers, going to business chambers, going to business forums, SME forums, and actually listening to them. And it goes back to curiosity rather than
Yeah.
judgment. How can I help? Because actually, what we do as health and safety people is we help businesses become more effective, more efficient, and we help them become more successful. So coming at it from that direction of what I can do is help you have your business more successful, bring in more clients, be more efficient, retain your staff rather than losing staff hand over fist or, having people leave you for bigger jobs or whatever. Like, I can help you grow that just through health and safety.
Yeah.
And it's really simple and really straightforward.
Yeah.
It requires a little bit of front end investment in training and time and coaching, and making sure that you've got somebody with the best version of your staff. Um, and that will pay
Yeah.
dividends further on down the line. But yeah, like an awful lot of SMEs, they don't come to the big conferences. They don't come to the big exhibitions that an awful lot of us are at. Um, so it's meeting people where they're at
Yeah.
is really, really important. And yeah, if you need to do a TikTok dance in order to convince people.
You don't see my downstairs. No, nobody wants to see a dad downstairs though. But I might put that in my back pocket and take some dancing lessons.
Desperate times.
Exactly. Yeah, it will be desperate, believe me. So we've touched on then the culture side of it. So I think that's massive into it. It's one big thing that the foundation is trying to make sure that they drive out the educational piece and really get more advocates out there to challenge. So if you look at some of the behavioural safety aspects of what people do in this day and age, is that advanced further, do you think, nowadays? Or is there still work there that we need to think about the behavioural safety and how we bring that down a level to probably to that self-employed?
Oh, I
It's
think
another deep question there you could do.
it's another podcast episode, that one. Behavioral safety is really essential,
Yeah.
is understanding what makes people tick, understanding what people's drivers are, understanding why people come to work,
Yeah.
and understanding that that might not be the same for everybody. Um, there was a fascinating panel that had the honor of chairing whilst I was in a health and safety conference in Japan last year, where somebody talked about the purpose of work.
Yeah.
And actually, if you understand your purpose within the work that you do, it's it's the really old story of the new CEO of NASA walks through
Oh, yes.
and he meets one of the cleaners, and the cleaner's mopping the floor, and he asks the cleaner, "What are you doing?" And the cleaner's response is, "I'm helping put a man on the moon." Like, that is it's that if you know what part you have to play in whatever business it is, that is a really strong vision, it's a really strong mission, and that those values are carried by leadership, it becomes really, really easy. But we've been talking about behavioral safety for a really long time. That's started to dip into the importance of mental health and well-being, and we've still got so, so far to go
Yeah.
on that. Um, you know, particularly in male-heavy industries, particularly, with this rise of toxic masculinity and the manosphere and all of that kind of stuff. Like, we're still having the same conversations.
It's about working on those people's beliefs, isn't it? So, like, you've got the beliefs which drives your value set, your value set drive your attitude, and your attitude drive your own behaviour, don't they? So it's about how do we start to unpack some of those areas to say, but where's that belief come from? If I've been working with someone for a period of time that's been working as a scaffolder and have always done that, well, guess what? I'm gonna have the same belief as that individual, because I come in and go, well, Dave's all right. He's been doing that job for 30 years. Nothing's happened to him. So why would I want to be putting a harness on now? And we need to break that down so those individuals go, but do I share those same beliefs? And that's why we need more advocates.
Oh, of course we do, and the more it's the same thing over and over again. The more we talk about something, the more we shed a light on something,
Yeah.
the better it becomes. It's painful. Asking people to change their behaviors is really, really difficult. We had that difficulty, if you're a health and safety geek and a safety nerd like I am, we had a huge behavioral shift when the car safety belt was
Yes.
introduced, and the pressure that what what the campaign started to do was that positive peer pressure,
Yeah.
and they actually targeted children
Yeah.
initially of going, "You telling mum and dads that you can't drive the car until
Yeah.
until your belt's on." And then that starts to shift, and it just becomes it's normal now. Of course you put your seatbelt on when you get in the car.
I'm just thinking about that now. You've now evoked a memory in my brain in regards to the advert and Clunk Click.
Yeah,
And it's just as you were saying, I'm like, yeah,
yeah.
couldn't click. But God, how long ago was that advert? But it just shows that through the messaging, through working on kind of the emotional side of it to get people to really think, there's things that have resonated and stopped within the mind, and that's probably a back. And as soon as you said that, I was like, "Come click."
Click, click,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And I think that's the thing with, with advocates, particularly those who have
yeah,
survived, falls. One of the most famous is obviously Jason Anker, and he speaks incredibly eloquently and, incredibly it's an incredibly heartbreaking
yeah.
story. And it's not we don't just have Jason, we have a number of others, and I remember listening to one of one of the stories, and I'm so glad it was on a non-recorded webinar, because I think for the first time in a very, very long time, I had to turn my camera off because did it get me. And actually it wasn't just the story of what had happened, it was the fact that you could see it coming. Do you know, like, yeah, you could see it coming, and hindsight's 20/20 and all of that, but you could understand that it was just you could see it happening, and this was a business owner who simply did not care, and then you find out that he'd done it elsewhere and done it to other people, and I think that's the bit of it's that the kind of sense of justice and that absolute kind of this should never have happened. It's bad enough that it happened once, but then for somebody to not have learnt from that and continue to treat their staff that way was
Comes
yeah,
back to values, isn't it? It's about
goes back to
if
value.
you know that that's something that's happened in a past life, if you can carry on doing that, then that says a lot about you as the individual, which is, and there are people out there, and that's where we need to educate, where people can then come back and challenge those individuals going,
Yeah.
I've seen things, I've been educated here, and
Yeah.
actually I'm coming from a power of strength. And I suppose it leads me on to that next question about kind of risk perception as well, isn't it? Is that how do we start to really help people in that risk perception? Because my level of risk to your level of risk, we might perceive things in a totally different way. And
Oh,
so
absolutely.
I'll go if someone tells me rather than go, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's get some of those alarm bells going first of all. So, what have you seen within your career around kind of risk perception of the work that's being done?
I think it's really interesting because I think we've alluded to it a couple of times. You've got people who've been doing the job for 30, 40 years and everything. Nothing's ever happened to me and everything's fine. And, you stop with all of this noisy health and safety stuff. Um, and then you have your newbies, your new entrants who don't tend to know any better and are very eager to learn and very eager to just say yes so that they can keep their job. But actually, what's incredibly interesting with Gen Z um, is that they are an awful lot more educated.
Yeah.
They are an awful lot more aware, and they are, us millennials who are, old now, um, we're probably mature. Yeah. I wouldn't say mature either, just older, older. Yeah, not necessarily wiser. But we're probably the last generation where that social contract was drilled in. You go to school, you do good at school, you go to uni, you get a good job, blah, 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 blah. Gen Z are very, very comfortable with going, no, very, very comfortable with going, your values do not align with mine. I'm off to go find something else. And I think that's a real shock to the system for an awful lot of people who are, but I've been doing it for 40 years and there's nothing wrong with that. And somebody else comes in and goes, what on earth? How on earth are you doing this? This isn't okay. Um,
Bit of the truth mirror into at that point in
yeah.
time is, oh, yeah.
And that's very uncomfortable for people who are older and more experienced because they've been doing it for that long like that. And, of and who are you to come in at 21 or even, 16 and tell me that I've been doing it wrong? And that's a really big challenge. But harnessing so when I used to when I used to work for a broadcast company, we would spend a whole week. There was a whole week of induction
Yeah.
for all of our new starters, and they spend a whole day with me. And they were all either placement students, so kind of halfway through their university courses, or they were fresh out of uni, hadn't really seen the world, and I was the health and safety department. We worked in 190 different countries, 365 days a year. We delivered, sports officiating to tens of thousands of sporting events across the entire world. I can't be everywhere all at the same time. Unfortunately, I'm not that good. um, so my job on my day with them was to instill this idea that actually, if something doesn't feel right in your gut, stop, figure it out, and then move forward. And I mean, we'd spend the first 45 minutes discussing why health and safety is terrible and awful. And then we flipped it all around and we had that really important conversation. And we'd go through the technical stuff and the working at height and all, you know, and we'd had we had a very bad experience where one of our placement students died from a fall from height. And and that was horrific.
Mhm.
Um, and the ripple effect that that had across the business, um, the the trauma that that created from those of us that just went to the coroners
Yeah.
and heard the extensively long list of injuries, and knowing that his brother had worked for us,
Yeah.
and um, like I didn't ever want to be in that position again,
Yeah.
like never.
Yeah.
Um, and
You can tell that people, obviously I'm close to you and I can see you tearing up, and because you've been through an experience, you've felt every single emotion, So that's
Absolutely.
yeah, and that's what people need to understand when they are taking those actions is you might have gone, but think about everyone else that you leave in the way then they go, someone's gonna have that question of why? Why has it happened? How could it have been stopped? And there's probably loads of areas that
Of
it could have
course there
been
is.
stopped and
And you kind of realize that, having been through a number of kind of, whether it's EHO or HSE visits, etc., like they are awful. They're really awful. Even if you're like, yeah, here's all my paper, here's all my evidence, here's absolutely everything, here's my risk assessment. If every single I is dotted and T is crossed, they are still really awful experiences to go through. And if you care about the people you work with, you do, whether it's right or wrong, you feel responsible.
yeah.
You feel accountable for it. Um, and it but we used that story within that business not to scare people who are joining us, but actually to say this is actually the reality. This is the reality of what, yes, it's all shiny and exciting and brilliant, and you get to travel the world and see amazing things, but there is also a risk that you could not come home.
Don't get distracted from the risk is that you
Yeah,
think about the country and where you're going and
that's
living a
great.
lifestyle rather than actually
Yeah.
I'm
When it comes to that bit, if you cannot put everything else in a box and just focus on that, I would rather you not do it.
yeah. And it goes back to your example about not clipping on and
Yeah.
the ninth camera.
Yeah.
Something there you've been having great working practice for the first day, and that one time, that could
Yeah.
have been the time when danger, not sleeping, and
Yeah.
but thank
Something had
God,
happened. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
that individual was safe at that point in time. But you do probably sit there and go, "Oh my God," with yeah, because that takes you back to then memories
Of
of
course.
past. Yeah,
I mean, we used to call them moments.
yeah, yeah, yep,
Yeah, or as I used to say to the guys is, the moments that you're not gonna tell your mum about.
yeah.
Do you know, those things of like, "We're not gonna tell mum, we got away with it, it's fine." I was like, "Those are the bits that I wanna know about."
Exactly, and that stuff comes back to the culture, isn't it? About really again, listen, yeah, something's happened, but we need to understand where those points of failure have happened because we need to change that and we need to speak. It's not about kind of chastising you. It's about saying that's great, but this is about making sure we can have an adult conversation that goes, we can learn from it. And I think sometimes people feel, oh, this is disciplinary, this is me out of a job. But how many times is that happening? And we've got to say, let's have an adult conversation because it goes back to what you said right at the start. I want you to go home safely. And what can we learn and draw a line under it? But we know tomorrow we are working far more safe than we were yesterday,
Yeah.
and that's such a compelling reason to change into it.
Absolutely, and I think that's the thing is those stories really fuel it.
Yeah.
They really, really do. They, um, Jason's story sticks with me. All of those stories.